Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We've been dealing with Susan Sontag's Against Interpretation. We already dealt with section 1 of this particular essay, and we were somewhere in between section 2. Now, let's try to understand what she states in this particular section. So, in section 2, Sontag states that it is difficult to believe that art existed for art's sake before any theory came into being. We understood it yesterday. Means the criticism or theory, literary theory, concentrated on art for life's sake in during the Greek period and there onwards as well. And she doubts whether any such theory existed before, which believed in art for art's sake. Therefore, she thinks that at present we, the critics, have the task of defending art. The means may differ. We can only quarrel with one or another means of defense. Means that means may differ. Means critics may adopt different means or different methods of defending art, but the common task is that of defending art. Therefore, the critics have to overthrow any means of defending and justifying art, which becomes particularly obtuse or onerous. That is not easy or difficult to what we call understand. Such methods have to be discarded, or the methods which are insensitive, which are not suitable for the contemporary needs and practice, should be thrown away. So she thinks that the focus should not be simply on content. So the in many cases, content is given uh, primary importance, and that should not become an hindrance, a hindrance or nuisance, or it should not become a kind of Philistinism. Philistinism, I mentioned yesterday, is a kind of dislike for work of art, etc. So that should not become the case in case of defending art. Then she further continues with the thought that the actual developments in many arts now seem to be leading us away from the idea that a work of art is primarily its content. So we should go away from that idea. Means there is a popular notion, belief that content should become primary aspect in analyzing a work of art. Rather, this idea is so dominant even today. Means she uses the term, this idea still exerts an extraordinary hegemony. Now you're familiar with the term hegemony, means the dominance of a particular group of people. Here we understand that the people who think that content is primary in understanding the work of art is still very much dominant. So she suggests that this particular view or this particular idea persists, exists, and still influences the literary theory because it is now perpetuated. It is perpetuated means it is made, it is continued, it is unending. Perpetuation is making something eternal, making something endless, and this perpetuation takes place in the form of, in the guise of a certain way of encountering works of art thoroughly ingrained among most people who take any of the art seriously. Means this is imposed upon. What is imposed upon? That content is primary, and one should understand the work of art from this perspective. and this way is perpetuated. Okay, and it is ingrained rather among many people who take this view seriously. Now, this idea of content entails entailment, you might be knowing in semantics. A entails B or something of this kind. X entails Y. You must be knowing presupposition and entailment. Entailment means when we make some statement, it gives some meaning. Now, when we say that John is Mary's husband, so it entails that John is married. Okay, whereas it presupposes the existence of a person named John and even the listener's familiarity with John. So that is presupposition. We don't want to go into the semantics here, but I'm just telling you entailment. So entailment means to convey some meaning. So what does the overemphasis on the idea of content entail? It entails that the perennial it is the perennial and never consummated project of interpretation. Okay, this particular idea is never seriously understood by, and it is imposed upon the people continuously. As a result, it is the habit, means in opposite to this, it is the habit of approaching work of art in order to interpret them that sustains is this habit of interpretation. Is people are made to think that interpretation is the primary aspect of studying any work of art. One should be in a position to interpret on the basis of the content. And this particular approach continues, it sustains the the fancy that there really is such a thing as content of work of art. Means what exactly she's trying to say here is that content is so given so much important that people equalize the work of art with content itself. Means understanding the content itself becomes a task of the critic. Rather, she thinks that we should not. We should study the work of art with the view of art for art's sake, not for the sake of life, or art for life's sake. With these words, she now goes ahead with section 3, wherein she talks about the nature of interpretation. So, what we understood in section 2 is the her views on the over dominance of the critics who give primary importance to content in the field of literary criticism and literary theory. Now we shall go ahead with section 3.